What does it mean to have more than one of the same object in Godot? This is where instancing comes into play. Making our way through the documentation for Godot 4, we will be looking at repeating or instancing objects in a scene. If you enjoy software and game development educational content like this, please kindly support the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you so much. Last time we looked at what it means to have a tree of nodes and scenes. We also saw that a single node was a root node. The beauty of this is that it allows for you to compartmentalize your game into any number of scenes. Let's look at making a ball object. The assets that you will need to follow along with can be found in the documentation, which can be found in the description. There is a mini game you can make there as well if you want to follow it. We are going to create a new scene by making a new tab. Next, in the scene doc, we are going to want to create a scene that has a rigid body 2D as its root node, as we want to have physics working for this. We will discuss rigid bodies in a later video. Next, we are going to need to add a sprite 2D node and a collision shape 2D node. You need the former to see the game object in the scene, and the latter for it to interact with things in the scene. Now let's just save the scene with Ctrl-S and name it ball. We now have a blueprint for spawning in balls. We can put it, or multiple its, into as many scenes as we would like. Remember, when scenes are nested in other scenes, they behave like nodes. Going back to the last video, we have the main scene. Let's just plop a few balls in there. Notice how each instance of the ball now has its own unique name, but you can modify each one. They are all the same, but not really. They are all unique instances of a ball scene. We can change each ball independent of each other ball. Let's make a ground scene and change the weight and bounciness, and watch what happens when we press play. You might already be seeing some possibilities arising here. Now that we see instancing in action, let's talk about editing instances. You can change the properties of one ball without affecting the others using the inspector. These changes don't affect the original scene, just this instance. Or you can actually affect every instance by opening the scene back up and making changes. However, changing a property on an instance always overrides values from the corresponding packed scene. Let's change the bounciness on just one ball. If we click on the physics material property to expand it, we can adjust the bounce field. Let's set it to 0.5. If we play the game, we see that every ball bounces. Let's now adjust an individual instance. Head back to the main scene by clicking on the corresponding tab above the viewport. Select one of the instanced ball nodes and, in the inspector, set its gravity scale value to 10. A gray revert button appears next to the adjusted property. This icon indicates you are overriding a value from the source packed scene. Even if you modify the property in the original scene, the value override will be preserved in the instance. Clicking the revert icon will restore the property to the value in the save scene. Rerun the game and notice how this ball now falls much faster than the others. Resources are another essential building block of Godot games we will cover in later. So what does any of this even matter? Well, are you familiar with the concept of model view controller or design philosophies like that? Let's just forget them for now. While we will talk about that in a later video on game development, Godot is really better for thinking about elements that your player will see in the game. Take a look at the diagram on screen. You can come up with a diagram like this for almost any type of game. Each rectangle represents an entity that's visible in the game from the player's perspective. The arrows tell you which scene owns which. Once you have a diagram, we recommend creating a scene for each element listed in it to develop your game. You'll use instancing, either by code or directly in the editor, to build your tree of scenes. Programmers tend to spend a lot of time designing abstract architectures and trying to fit components into it. Designing based on scenes makes development faster and more straightforward, allowing you to focus on the game logic itself. Because most game components map directly to a scene, using a design based on scene instantiation means you need little other architectural code. Here's the example of a scene diagram for an open-world game with tons of assets and nested elements. Imagine we started by creating the room. We could make a couple of different room scenes with unique arrangements of furniture in them. Later, we could make a house scene that uses multiple room instances for the interior. We would create a citadel out of many instanced houses and a large terrain on which we would place the citadel. Each of these would be a scene instancing one or more sub-scenes. Later, we could create scenes representing guards and add them to the Citadel. They would be indirectly added to the overall game world. With Godot, it's easy to iterate on your game like this, as all you need to do is create and instantiate more scenes. And that will do it for this video. Thanks for making it all the way through. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for making it all the way through the video. Please join us in the next one. See you next time.